And we have one of our great partners, Lieutenant General Roy Galido, the 66th Commanding General of the Philippine Army. He's going to give a speech. Now, I put a lot of pressure on him. I said he was really good on the panel, but I know he's going to be even better in the speech. And he told me to ramble on. I'm going back to grade school with his bio, so he doesn't have to speak as long. No, just kidding. I'll keep it nice and short, but unbelievable career. Lieutenant General Galido, he assumed position of Commanding General in July of 2023. And during his 36-year military career, he's distinguished himself in the fields of intelligence, combat, and civil military operations, and beginning as a platoon leader of the 63rd Infantry Battalion and company commander of the 1st Infantry Battalion. And most recently, he served as the 16th commander of the Western Mindanao Command, West MINCOM, the central command there. I've seen them in action. They're unbelievable. He is has an MM from Philippine Christian University in Manila, an MS in Information Technology from the University of New South Wales, and an MPM and major in Development Security and Development Academy of the Philippines. Please join me in a warm welcome for Lieutenant General Galido.
Thank you very much, General Brown. Aloha! Aloha! In the Philippines, we say mabuhay. Mabuhay. Thank you very much. You learned a word in the Philippines. Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a blessed afternoon to all. I am honored to have been given this privilege to speak before you and share my insights about land power, an insight from a small state. Small state, what I mean by small state, not physical small, but limited national power. At the outset, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to the Association of the United States Army for, again, spearheading this seminal forum. One that reaffirms the vitality of our engagement and our shared commitment to a secure and stable Indo-Pacific. Over the past years, we have awakened to new realities that feel both sudden and familiar. From the widening vortex of conflicts in Ukraine, the Middle East, the tightening tension across Taiwan Strait, as well as the Korean Peninsula, and lately, the Indian-Pakistan. We see the status quo being assailed in all fronts. Definitely, these are not any more outliers or isolated events. These are signposts of impending deeper shift, the return of contested geographies, intensifying competition for critical resources, the reorientation of socio-political paradigms, and more importantly, the redrawing of the global security architecture. For us, defense and military practitioner, all this points to one thing: increased prospect or likelihood of conflict. And when we speak of conflict, we instinctively fall back on land power, with all the attendant requirements and preparation needed to effectively generate it. Caught in the middle of this geopolitical maelstrom are not only major global and regional players, but also small states struggling to survive and protect their interests. And these states almost always mainly rely on their land power to generate the effects required to survive in a modern battlefield. In the dynamic and unforgiving realities of war, land power represents the most visible, viable, enduring form of deterrence by way of direct physical control. More importantly, land power acting as a great equalizer, provides small states a credible means to assert agency and ensure their role in regional stability. Warfare, as Clausewitz aptly framed it, is not all about scale and size. Modern land warfare instead emphasizes the ability to maneuver in complex environment, seize and dominate key terrains, and turn geography into a force multiplier. Essentially, it is shaped by elements which are often overlooked in great power calculations: intelligent use of force, adaptability, and positional advantage that any small state can muster to assert its place in the modern battlefield. But land power can mean many things to different states. Mainstream land power theories, doctrines, and operating concepts that we know today have been derived mostly from perspective of strong and modern armies, which appear to have limited practical utility for small states like the Philippines. Unlike great and middle powers that can speak confidently about power projection, deterrence and control, fortified by their sprawling defense budget, small states operate from the outskirts of advantage and face a very different calculus. For starters, small powers operate with limited strategic magnitude and depth, smaller resources, and lesser tolerance to regional shocks. Their margin of error is also narrow. They cannot afford nonsensical doctrines, ambitious posture, or underutilized force structure. The burden and risk associated with land power employment by small states are proportionally heavier and more complicated. It is easy to imagine a military strong state employing land power for the purpose of prevailing in a modern battlefield. But for a small military power that is unfortunately threatened by top-tier military adversary, it will really strain its military leaders' mental faculties, drain its economic resources, as well as test the limits of collective ingenuity and most especially national will. In essence, small states are compelled to behave differently in a way that generates and employ land power. If they are to compensate for major force and technological asymmetries, especially when facing a far military superior potential adversary. Today, generating and maintaining land power as we know it is very resource and technologically intensive undertaking, and therefore unsustainable for most small power in the long run. Let me briefly refresh you why. First, because of the continuing expansion of the battle space, the land force are compelled to invest in cross-domain capabilities, not only to support joint multi-domain operation, but also as a matter of basic force protection. As threats targeting land force packages could emanate from other domains. Second, because of emergence of game-changing technologies. On one side, the kill chain has been substantially abbreviated, with armies now striving to invest in capabilities that will allow them to see further, shoot farther, and hit better. On the other side of the coin, we also see the proliferation of kill chain disruptors, which are slowly being integrated as essential land force capabilities. Lastly, land power is increasingly being pushed to become more network-centric because of the immense data points, mostly from the multitude of sensors and effectors that need to be integrated. This kind of network architecture is very difficult for small powers to put up, maintain, and protect, especially in heavily contested environments. If small states will attempt to subscribe to this type of land force configuration, most of them will fall short, mainly due to financial and technological constraints. Against this backdrop, small states are faced with multiple dilemmas insofar as generating and employing land power that is responsive to a confronted threat while at the same time realistic and sustainable. First is sunk cost. Because of faulty capability choices in the past, arising primarily from poor appreciation of obtaining security environment or simply because of arbitrary or whimsical approach to capability development, some armies become tied up to some platforms of force types which would entail substantial financial loss to reverse. Not to mention the public backlash that may arise from such reversals, which is tantamount to acknowledging failure in strategic planning. Next is the threat of obsolescence. Rapid evolution of technology could make previously essential, yet resource-demanding capabilities useless over time. In some cases, long before these are fully paid. As such, small states are under constant threat of acquiring capabilities of declining relevance, while those that choose to hedge and wait are left with no capabilities at all. Another predicament is limited capability options. Small states rarely get access to top-notch weapons, which are necessary to become competitive in the modern battlefield. Even assuming that such states could financially afford it, defense hardware and softwares are available in the market, as well as other off-the-shelf platforms, are at least a generation older, which puts into question their efficacy and combat effectiveness when employed against top-tier states. There are also legal and policy restrictions to contend with. In some cases, certain legal policies restrictions, locally and internationally, stand in the way from acquiring certain capabilities, or even restricting their use, thereby impacting on the manner the Army chooses to fight. There are also instances where capabilities of other domains are prioritized over land power based on formulated defense and security strategies. These are not inherently wrong, but these are realities that nonetheless frame an impact on how small states generate and use land power. Next is coalition or partnership demand. Capability choices of armies are also influenced in no small measure by its defense allies and strategic partners, which they are expected to collaborate with and fight in times of war or any security-related contingency. In so doing, a substantial chunk of their resources needs to be rechanneled to specific capabilities to achieve system commonality and promote interoperability. For smaller states, unilateral posture is sometimes traded in in exchange for a better collective stance. Lastly, competing priorities between internal and external defense. Some small armies, like the Philippines, are also simultaneously confronting internal threats, thereby causing not only unnecessary distraction, but also compete for time, effort, and resources. Aside from the constant dilemmas faced by small powers, they're also more prone to succumb to major pitfalls in employing land power. Thinking and fighting like Goliath, constant exposure with great powers sometimes gives small powers the illusion that it can also fight like one, endeavoring to match the adversary weapon for weapon, system for system. But in seeking parity, they end up developing unsuitable tactical instruments that look impressive on paper but stretches resources thin and lacks strategic breadth to win real wars. Instead, they need to think and act more like David, directly avoiding the adversary's strength while capitalizing on its unique competitive advantage. Developing a broad range of capabilities instead of specializing in a few essential ones. Heavily influenced by great powers, small powers also want to be good at everything instead of just focusing on specializing on what is essential to their chosen strategy. In trying to be strong everywhere, small states end up being weak everywhere. The essence lies not in ubiquity, but in purposeful readiness, knowing why, where, how, and with what to fight. Small states, therefore, should be more of specialists than generalists. They should be willing to accept some degree of risk in some non-priority areas just to be able to focus its resources where it matters the most. Focusing on modernization rather than force relevance. Small armies are prone to follow the path of great powers, pursue high-end technologies and sophisticated weaponries that it cannot sustain, and prioritize optics over operational relevance. As a result, by giving more premium to appearance over functionality, they end up being well-equipped but unable to fight the way they have chosen. Having said all this, I now put forward some proposition that could allow small states to punch above their weight, work around inherent capabilities, resource limitations, while constantly maintaining alignment between the ends and the means. Well, aside from the hybrid solution I mentioned earlier, do you know that Manny Pacquiao is returning to fight? By the way, Manny Pacquiao is our reservist. He's a brigade commander in the reserve. So, wait for him. Kidding aside, first, small state must be concept-centric but technology-enabled. Small states can afford to get entangled with a technology race, no matter how tempting it may appear. In fact, small powers should refuse to be drawn in this type of contest that is surely cannot win. So the most viable option is to be concept-centric, yet technology-enabled. It just means that they should make full use of any technology that they could lay their hands on, but it should not be made as a central or dominating theme in their land power strategy. History is replete with examples where innovative concepts were able to blunt the adversary's technology and numerical advantage. Next, small states should be able to identify early on their unique competitive advantage with respect to the kind of war they seek to fight. This could take the form of geographical feature, qualities and traits of the people, critical resources, critical competency, or any other national feature that could be leveraged to offset a potential adversary's strength and advantage. Another recourse is choose the way you intend to fight and be really good at it. Factoring one's unique competitive advantage, small states should clearly choose how to intend to fight and strive to be really good at it. This means channeling time, energy, and resources to areas that matter most. Focus will allow even modestly equipped armies to generate outsized effects through training, discipline, leadership, and conceptual clarity. Without this clarity, small states will be doomed to wars they cannot fight or adopt technology they cannot sustain. For instance, small states would be better off fighting asymmetrically, enforcing denial, than aspiring for control, or being munition-centric instead of platform-centric with respect to the defense material investments. It is also crucial to secure positional advantage early. Well, this was thoroughly discussed earlier, and I wouldn't want to repeat it unless there are others who would want to hear it again, but I would rather give time to the question and answer after that. And related to this positional advantage, I would like to emphasize that cognitive positioning is as important as physical positioning. Cognitive positioning accords the employers, again, this is very important for us, legitimacy and morality of action, clarity of purpose, as well as splinters the enemy coalition and clouds the adversary's decision-making calculus. Lastly, small states should strive to expand their alliances and strategic partners. Small states could multiply their land power exponentially by continuously building a network of partnerships and alliances involving reliable and like-minded armies for a more purposive and impactful theater-level collaboration and integrated response. Consistent with the dictum that the whole is greater than the sum of parts, multinational collaboration offers an attractive option for small states that are in search for an efficient and effective way to deter and push back imperialist ambition and expansionist policies of regional bullies. This type of collaboration is usually concretized by way of reciprocal access agreement, synchronized theater-wide multilateral exercises and drill, force hosting and rotation, capability sharing, mutual logistics arrangement, and the like. In closing, the specter of conflict increasingly looms over the Indo-Pacific and beyond, shaping the strategies and capability choices of every nation in the region. As an anchor of stability in national security, armies should be able to forefront in assuring its people, as well as its partners, that it could prevail against any aggressor. But this assurance can only be deemed credible if matched with consistent demonstration of mastery in land power application. The arc of history bends towards the prepared, and victors favors the bold. For small states, they cannot afford to reduce into a mere passive observers in the seemingly never-ending power struggle occurring at a global scale, with their fate hanging on the balance at the constant mercy of irresponsible great powers, their interests threatened from time to time. Instead, they should take more proactive role on shaping regional security outcomes by leveraging nuanced land power strategies combined with extensive understanding of the operational environment. This should more than compensate for their inherent lack of means. In this uncertain time, small states must not merely strive to survive through land power, it should aim to prevail through it. Mahalo, my teammates, my partners, thank you very much. My buhay.
Sir, thank you for your presentation. Major Youngju, Army Fellow, AUSA. Question to you is specifically in regards to recent increasing tensions in the South China Sea.
Okay.
I guess I'm really interested in learning more about how is the Philippine Army adapting its force posture and capabilities. I know you touched that at the end a little bit, but specifically South China Sea, I'm very interested in hearing from you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, this has been officially published. The defense concept of the Philippines is about the comprehensive archipelago defense concept, which, particularly for the land force, should be able to project its force and its power within its economic interests, EEZ. With that concept, as mentioned earlier this morning, the Army is transitioning from an internal security perspective to territorial defense. And our plan is clear. We have to project our capability in partnership with the Air Force and Navy that we will be able to protect our interests. As to the platform and capability, it's in the list and we would want it to be within our hands soon. I hope that answered your question. Thank you very much.
Sir, Jeff Van Antwerp,
Yes.
also at USERPAC. You talked about the importance of the cognitive domain in obtaining positional advantage. What is your message to your soldiers and your service members and your population regarding kind of the cognitive ground that you are now competing for with multitude of adversaries, but the PRC in particular, as they try to demonstrate their power, infringing upon Philippine sovereignty? How do you communicate that, and how are you fighting that fight kind of internally?
Thank you very much. Very good question. Actually, this cognitive domain is very much challenging, especially for a small state trying to develop its economic power in order to develop its national power. When we say economics, the back end, the backbone, seemingly we cannot get out of this connectivity. But what is important right now is for my countrymen to understand what is the national interest and national sovereignty. This, very unfortunate, as I mentioned earlier, most of you would know, for the past 5 decades and more, we were internally focused, trying to solve internal problems, particularly on the thought of communism and Islamic radicalism. All these two internal threats are because of again, challenges in governance. Well, we know for a fact that is a factor. And of course, the quest to be able to protect the government interests. Now, as we move on, and as we realize that the interest of the Filipino people when it comes to its economic zone, our common people are being deprived of our interests, and it deprives the survivability of the Philippines. Because take note, the Philippines is made up of islands and we are archipelago. We do not follow the rules of UNCLOS, our nation would not exist as a nation. And how do we generate this will? We cannot say it's easy, but we little by little open up what's happening, what is being deprived, and more importantly, a firm statement that we are protecting the interests of our country. I know it's very difficult for us, especially if you realize the structure, our economic structure, are managed by tycoons from the mainland. They're very difficult, but I know they're patriot Filipinos, but it's just the social mindset, the social cognitive domain that we have to change. That yes, you are here, but your interest should be for the Filipinos and our country to survive and be better. I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Tim Keppel, we talked earlier about a basketball experience playing the Filipinos in Kuwait. I'm just curious about how the Army's working with the Philippine Coast Guard to kind of deter some of the Chinese maritime militia activities and the incursions into territorial fishing areas, and also how you're planning if you need to put troops forward and resupply them in those areas, because that's actually kind of a contested environment that we're trying to get better at.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. Though this is about the Coast Guard, and Coast Guard in our case is not under the Armed Forces of the Philippines. But it used to be part of the Navy, and if they're part of the Navy, they have to implement the campaign of the Armed Forces. Unfortunately, they are under our Department of Transport. So nevertheless, looking at our situation, it's about our capability, our platforms. They have big ships, we have small ships. That's the situation. Hopefully soon, we will have bigger ships and we can ram on them. Well, as I said, if we are at par, definitely they will not do this to us. We are small, they're doing it, but again, as like what I mentioned earlier, we have to tell our neighbors that a strong fence will build better relationship. A strong fence will protect each other's interests. I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.